You open Google Ads and see that your campaign generated 400 conversions. Naturally, you head over to Google Analytics, but GA4 only shows 320 conversions. And what about your CRM? As you might have already guessed, it shows a completely different number. Hi, my name is Ivanka, and in this video, I'll break down why this happens and what to do about it. So you checked 4 different platforms for the same time period and saw different numbers. Which one is right? The answer is all of them, but in their own way. This is called a data discrepancy, and if you run any kind of digital marketing, you might be dealing with it right now. A data discrepancy is when the same event, be it a purchase, a sign-up, or a click, is measured differently by different platforms. It doesn't mean that each platform shows you incorrect numbers. What it means is that every tool uses its own measurement logic, attribution models, and data collection methods. It's like when 2 people are asked to watch the same football game, but one is tracking shots on the target and the other the number of goals and assists. They watch the same game but will give you a different result, but neither of them is wrong, and this is exactly what happens with your tools. GA4, Google Ads, Meta, CMSs, or any other platform used for digital marketing, they all watch the same customers, but they each count different things at different moments using different rules. Even though a data discrepancy is normal between different tools, it can and it will have consequences. When your data doesn't add up, it creates confusion in your reports, and as a result, it affects your decision-making. When you look at conversion numbers from one platform, taking them at face value, you might scale a campaign that isn't working. You allocate the budget to the channel that looks like your top performer, only to find out later that the initial data was misleading. In addition, platforms like Google Ads and Meta use your conversion data to train their bidding algorithms. And if this data is incomplete, the algorithms start optimizing for the wrong thing. They learn from a distorted version of your customers. And as a result, your campaign costs will rise, their performance will suffer, and it will be almost impossible for you to get the root cause of the problem. Unfortunately, it's not the only thing that can be negatively affected by a data discrepancy. Marketing experts can spend hours every week reconciling the numbers, explaining data mismatches to stakeholders, and debating which dashboard to believe. Thus, a data discrepancy can become a problem for the entire business. Now let's look closer at what exactly causes the data discrepancies in the first place. There are 6 main reasons. Each platform has its own logic for deciding when and how a conversion, session, or a user is counted. In addition, the platforms also have different attribution models that decide which touchpoint will get credit for a conversion. For example, on Monday, a person sees your ad on Facebook, but they don't buy. Then they decide to Google you on Friday and buy the thing they saw on Monday on Facebook. In this case, both platforms might take credit for the conversion. Meta will say that they started the journey and deserve credit. And GA4, that tracks the last click, will say that it belongs to Google. Even if you set the same attribution model across all your platforms, you will still see the difference in conversions. Why? Even though platforms can have similar naming for models, like last click, the math behind them might be different. Each platform sees a different part of the user journey. For example, your CRM records only final transactions. GA4 sees what happens on your website. They also have different calculations or definitions of click and session. A Google Ads click is not the same as a click in GA4. They use the same word, but measure different things. Each platform also has its own time limit for claiming credit. For example, Meta defaults to a 7-day click window, while Google Ads tracks conversions for up to 30 days after a user clicks. Because these timelines don't match, your cross-platform reports won't either. Platforms do what they are supposed to do, but differently. Even with a technical correct setup, you can still lose a portion of your data because of privacy utilities. For example, ad blockers prevent tracking scripts from loading entirely. This means that even if a user gives you a full consent on your cookie banner, they can still end up absolutely invisible to your browser analytics. In fact, depending on your target audience, you could easily be losing 20 to 30% of your conversion data right out of the gate. Browser restrictions also add to this. For example, intelligent tracking prevention caps the lifespan of first-party cookies to just a few days, breaking your attribution. Once again, if a user clicks on your ad on Monday but buys on Friday, the shortened cookie means your system can no longer link these two actions. Your marketing channels get zero credit for driving the journey. Firefox has similar protections. What's more, some users now switch to AI browsers that block all tracking by default. Different platforms process and update data at different speeds. Some tools report in near real time. Others have processing pipelines that take hours or even longer. If you're looking at data from yesterday, you're often looking at incomplete data. A good rule of thumb: only compare data that's at least 2 to 3 days old. That gives all your platforms enough time to finish processing. Your CRM records every transaction that happens in your backend. It can be a purchase made over the phone, in your physical store, or any offline channel. By default, GA4 sees what happens on your website. This creates a data discrepancy that has nothing to do with the tracking errors or attribution. It's just two systems that were designed to measure different things, and one of the most common reasons your numbers won't add up. Instead of data going missing, it can also get counted twice. And it's especially common on platforms like Meta. When you run both a browser-side pixel and server-side events, and they are not set up to recognize each other, Meta logs the same conversion twice. Thus, you'll have a real purchase counted as two. If you work with clients in Europe or in the United States, this one will be relevant for you. Because laws like GDPR in Europe and CCPA in California in the US give users the legal right to opt out of tracking entirely. When a user declines your cookie banner, your analytics tools are legally required to stop collecting data. However, their purchase can still show up in your CRM. Consent can be quite tricky. For example, a user can partially accept, which means that GA4 doesn't go completely dark. It receives cookieless pings that do not contain personal data. GA4 then collects thousands of these pings from different users and uses them to make an educated guess about how many conversions probably happened. That guess shows up in your reports as a modeled conversion, but not a real recorded one. And if you have an e-commerce store, especially based on Shopify, this next point is for you. In many e-commerce setups, the checkout page lives on a separate subdomain, and here's where the problem lies. Even if a customer accepted your cookie banner on your homepage, that consent signal doesn't always travel to the checkout. Because the browser sees the checkout as a different site, the tracking resets. So purchases on the checkout page often don't get recorded, even though the sale happened. Now that you know what causes the data discrepancies, let's talk about what you can do about them. Here's the honest answer. Not all of them can be fixed. Some you just need to understand and account for. Attribution model differences and data processing delays fall into this category. You can't make GA4 and Meta agree on who gets credit for a conversion. They were never designed to, and you can't make all platforms process data at the same speed. So instead of trying to fix them, focus on understanding them. Know which source to use for which decision. And when comparing data across platforms, give it at least 2 to 3 days before drawing any conclusions. Hidden data sources and event duplication, on the other hand, are solvable. If your CRM records transactions that GA4 never sees, you can configure webhooks to send that backend data into your tracking setup. And if Meta is double counting conversions, setting up a shared event identifier between your browser pixel and server-side events will fix that. Ad blockers and browser restrictions all have one thing in common. They completely block data from reaching your platforms, even when a user has given you full consent. Fortunately, all these technical bottlenecks can be resolved with server-side tracking. Instead of relying on the browser to send data directly to platforms where it can be blocked, it goes through a server you can control first. Because the request comes from your own domain, ad blockers don't intercept it. And for users who have consented, your data gets through reliably. Stape provides the infrastructure for server-side tracking, and you can set it up with your existing Google Tag Manager, without rebuilding everything from scratch. It works as a layer between your site and your platforms, making sure your data gets through reliably. Instead of dealing with complex cloud architecture, coding, or maintenance, Stape handles the heavy lifting. You get a reliable server-side setup running just in a fraction of the time, so your data remains steady and compliant. There's also Stape Logs. It helps you see exactly what's happening behind every conversion. This feature shows you all the incoming and outgoing requests in your server-side container. So instead of guessing where your data is being lost, you can see it. To wrap up, data discrepancies are a normal part of working with analytics, not an exception. Not every gap needs fixing, but every gap deserves an explanation. The goal is to understand what's causing it, and to make sure you're not losing data you don't have to lose. So if you want to take your tracking to the next level, Stape has everything you need to make it happen. Thanks for watching this video, and see you on the server side.